in the long term, there would be an increase because people would be paying a form of tolls. So we are only a little bit further on than we were last night, John. But I think what's coming into focus is that if this deal is done, and if there's even a hint of well, I think you called it a protection racket last night, and that's what it is, then we are into a new age in the norms of international maritime navigation.
Yeah, let's talk about the Iranian Foreign Ministry, which says it's close to finalising a deal with Oman to move vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. But it says that doesn't mean the waterway will reopen. Still wants guarantees from the United States. Tim Marshall, Foreign Affairs analyst, as ever, is watching all of this moment by moment. Hello to you, Tim.
Hello there, John.
Is your impression on this? I know you don't take any of this stuff for granted. Is it your impression the two sides are very close to a deal?
They're close to a deal of the vague outlines that we have. Whether they would be close to a deal if there are any sticking points, and two potential ones were thrown up today. Apparently, the Iranians were linking any deal that there must be a ceasefire in Lebanon. All guns must fall silent in Lebanon again. But they didn't make it clear whether that would scupper this. And the other one is they're clearly saying, once we've got this deal over the line, the Americans need to talk to us about lifting their sanctions against us. So there's a slight muddying of the waters. So I don't think we appear to be any further forward than we were this time yesterday. I think one of the things, though, that did happen of reasonable significance was the new Foreign Secretary, Mr. Miliband, going to America to see his opposite number and appearing not to oppose this idea of the deal as we know it.
Right, I want to come back to that latter point and actually go through one or two of the points you mentioned there. I mean, starting with Iran, saying that if there's to be a deal, we want to be clear there are no more Israeli hostilities into Lebanon against Hezbollah, which has been what they've been saying for a while, hasn't it? I mean, what is the state of that relationship between Israel, or more particularly the Netanyahu government and the White House? Because President Trump's been, well, intermittently quite upset with Bibi Netanyahu about just not doing what he wants to in Lebanon. And we have had, in recent days, just yesterday and the day before, I think, strikes into southern Lebanon.
Yeah. When the Americans really breathe fire, the Israelis have to cave in, and this happens from time to time. But the Israelis have their red lines. Now, what the Israelis are saying is that over the past couple of weeks, Hezbollah have been moving arms around in the south of Lebanon, nearish their border. They've been using their tunnels and smuggling, etc. And so they warned several villages, we are about to attack what we think are weapons dumps, and they then bomb them. Now, you can argue this is in direct violation of the agreements. But again, like I said, the Israelis have got the red lines. But what it, of course, did was yet again throw a spanner into these wider negotiations that are going on. And just for the context, as you know, Hezbollah are armed and trained by the Iranians, and the Iranians want to hang on to their power because it links them to the Mediterranean. So it is a muddying of the waters. I think of the two possible problems I've just mentioned, I think the idea of opening up the sanctions negotiations later, the Americans can agree to that. The reason I brought up Mr. Miliband, John, sorry, I know you're going to come back to it, is not that because Britain is a massive player in this. It's just that the Britain appears to be accepting that it's Iran and Oman that do deals on what is an international waterway.
Yes.
And that is quite a change in position.
It is. Well, I mean, we've heard from successive British Foreign Secretaries, Lammy and now Yvette Cooper. We've heard from the past Prime Minister, and I'm not sure we've heard from Andy Burnham on this, but presumably the policy is what the policy was, which is Britain does not accept the idea of Iranian control in the Strait of Hormuz, not just because it's such a vital waterway to the world economy, but it sets this really troubling precedent, and that is the British position. But when we heard from Ed Miliband yesterday, he rather glossed over that, didn't he, and was keen to express his solidarity with America, and that Britain shares the view that this deal needs to get over the line for all of our sakes.
Yeah, and there wasn't much nuance. I mean, it's not even a get-out clause, but a slight sort of wriggle room for him is that they haven't accepted tolls, because that would probably be a red line. But you and I discussed this last night. If there's a 60-day experimental period during which this deal is implemented and things get back to normal, and after that point, Iran then starts charging tolls,
yes.
Are the Americans really going to send the aircraft carrier groups back, and what the hell is Britain going to do about it anyway? But you're right, Britain has been absolutely 100% solid that there has to be freedom of navigation, there has to be innocent passage, as it's called under international law. And I noticed that there's 8 of the biggest ship owning companies in the world have written a joint letter to the IMO. This is the International Maritime Organization, which is a UN body based in London, actually. And they've said under no circumstances should this be thrown away, this idea of innocent passage and freedom of navigation. And the thing that the problem is not that it wouldn't just be about the Strait of Hormuz. If you throw that internationally recognized way of doing business in the choke points of the world, you are then opening the door for it tolls or control by the countries each side of the choke points, that they will have established the right that they can say who can and who cannot go through these choke points. Yes. So, it's not just about the Strait of Hormuz. If you give up the idea about the Strait of Hormuz, you're pretty much giving it up around the globe.
Right, and that's it's a genuinely important point of principle. But, the reality, I suppose, on the ground or at sea in the Strait of Hormuz is that Iran isn't concerned by that. They are concerned to keep their claim of control in the Strait of Hormuz there. They do not want to be seen, will not be seen to be tearing that up or surrendering that principle, because it would amount to a significant setback or defeat, and the hardliners would absolutely rise up against such a thing. So I guess they're going to take the position they're saying. But tell me, Tim, if it's an idea, and tell me if it is, as you understand it or believe it to be an idea, that there should be voluntary payments for the purpose, well, they'd be described, I suppose, as payments for service and for security. Why would anyone pay a service or security charge if they don't have to? Unless, the fact is, if they don't pay those charges, they're going to be in potential trouble, maybe danger.
Yeah, it's voluntary. You don't have to pay it. But if you don't pay it, you might not be coming through, I think, is what the reality would be. So, I mean, the Iranians are clearly trying to leverage this, and because of international relations, countries are often look at the short-term gains. They may accede to it. I mean, we're going to find out. I mean, allegedly, this deal was across the line. We were going to hear about it yesterday, and now it's going to be soon, possibly today. Well, we'll find out. But if it is that, if it is A, that it eventually goes to tolls, or B, that in this agreement is the idea of voluntary payments, yes, the whole system is thrown out.
Yes.
And you are then in a world where the Americans have clearly retreated, and they have retreated from the widely established and followed idea of freedom of passage. And given that they're the only country in the world with the ability to enforce such international norms globally, you've gone back in time. And it's not healthy. Now, in the short term, oil prices will go down. That's good. The fertilizer supplies and precursors for fertilizer making will start to flow, and that's good for farming. It's good for prices. In the long term, there would be an increase because people would be paying a form of tolls. So we are only a little bit further on than we were last night, John. But I think what's coming into focus is that if this deal is done, and if there's even a hint of well, I think you called it a protection racket last night, and that's what it is, then we are into a new age in the norms of international maritime navigation.
Yeah, and we can look forward, last point, Tim, again, thanks for coming on, and we can look forward, if that's the correct phrase, to, if this deal is struck in the way that we sort of anticipate, we could look forward to America fudging the question of free passage and the possibility of future tolls, and British ministers along with them. We can say, look, we can say you're fudging, but it's also reasonable to sort of put in brackets, what else are you going to do?
It would absolutely be fudging, and they would say, "Oh no, because I don't think in the agreement it will say. I think it will say there will be no tolls in this 60-day period, and it'll leave it open about what happens after it. So they are able to fudge. No, look, there's no tolls, and then they can then dodge the subsequent questions about what happens afterwards. What can Britain do? Very little. What can the EU do? Very little. They have taken the same line, the EU, by the way, as the UK. They have been saying this is absolutely a fundamental principle.
Yes.
But individual countries are beginning to crack and are beginning to look with interest at that plan that you just mentioned, these so-called voluntary fees that you may or may not pay.
Okay.
So, at the moment, people are not taking a hard line, and what they said was a matter of principle.
We're going to need to sharpen our appetite for a whole lot of fudge. Tim Marshall, always a pleasure. Let's talk again soon.